Good morning, everyone. My name is Lucia Sastre, and I'm the head of marketing at meditation.live. And today I'm going to be hosting and introducing mindfulness to the workplace in 3 steps, featuring current HR leader at Intuit and former global well-being leader, Jennifer Gentry. Welcome, Jennifer. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
So on today's panel, Jennifer will be guiding us through a 3-step approach, building and maintaining a happy and productive work environment. So very excited to hear about this. But before we begin, I wanted to mention some really great news we've had at meditation.live that all of us are very, very excited about. Last week, we actually partnered up with SoftBank New York, and we raised about $3 million, which is some amazing news. And then on top of that, we were also featured in the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg. So if you're interested in checking these publications out, feel free to head to meditation.live and check them out. So with that said, I'm going to hand it off to Jennifer to give a quick intro about herself.
Thanks, Lucia. So thanks everyone for joining today. Just a little bit about me. I worked in the reward space for about 10 years and have a personal passion for mental health skill building and really being able to foster an environment to talk openly about mental health and building tools to aid in easing stress, building resilience, as well as handling those moments in life that may be a little bit challenging, in particular through mindfulness. And I was able to champion the launch of global mental well-being programs, which was really exciting. So thanks for having me today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. We're very excited to launch into this panel and learn more about mindfulness at work and how we can help employees and team members out there. But before we begin, I do want to remind everybody in the audience that this is an interactive panel, which means you can ask questions at any point in time through the Q&A chat box or by raising your hand and to be unmuted and asking the question verbally. So in any case, let's launch right into it. So the goal of today is definitely to help everybody in the audience walk away with a 3-step process to launching and maintaining a successful mindful program. So I know that talking to you, Jennifer, step number 1 is obviously introducing and identifying when it's necessary to bring a mindful program to the workplace. So that's actually my first question. What are some key indicators that tell you it's time to introduce a mindfulness program in the workplace?
Yeah, so I think that's a really great place for anyone to start. I would start with, assessing the workplace generally. Is it something that the workplace may be receptive of? I personally believe that it could fit anywhere, and lots of companies have had really robust well-being programs focusing on physical well-being, and really how could you incorporate a mindfulness program into that space to help foster that mental health aspect as well.
Got it. Yes, that's always a really good place to start, definitely. So Jennifer, what are some ways that we can introduce mindfulness programs to the workplace? What would be the process like if somebody was considering a mindful program for the workplace and they wanted to start somewhere? What would be the first thing that they would have to do?
Yeah, well, I think that potentially starting with your network, so looking at what others may be doing across your network of peers, peer companies, talent competitors, working with your consultants or carriers, and reaching out to those that seem interesting, that may have a place in your overall strategy, as well as potentially partnering with wellness programs generally. I think finding that right fit can take a little time, and having and pulling those levers around, learning from others who have done it before and what their challenges have been, as well as those people that you may be working closely to help design your overall strategy around benefits and offerings, typically would have the contacts and resources to help you facilitate that kind of conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to be able to leverage, your network and be able to find out what other companies are doing that's working for them. Obviously, every workplace is different and not everything will work for the same teams, but it's definitely a good starting point to begin with. So launching a little bit into step number 2. So step number 1, we identify that it's, finding the right fit for your team. And being able to be very mindful of the key indicators that tell you it's time to introduce a mindful program. But equally as important, helping, once you find the right program, getting your team members and employees to be engaged with this program, it's also very important. And I would love to hear from you about how, once you have this program, how do you get your teams to be engaged with it? What are some of the things that you do?
Mm-hmm. I think it really starts with the rollout and, what that kind of splash looks like. I'm a big proponent of communication across the year, so that it's not the one-time event, but really building it into the mechanism, or building the mechanism that you're engaging your employees to think about benefits and how this may fit into that experience throughout the year. I think an important element will be having leaders who can engage and promote the programs, the benefits of the programs, and even taking time to do them, and sharing stories if you have that in your organization, or in maybe businesses in your organization. And really those ongoing touch points and ways to bring this particular skill and resource of availability to your employees is really going to help to develop the habit.
Got it. Thank you, Jennifer. I do want to mention that we have a few questions coming in, and I'm going to go ahead and tackle the first one. So an anonymous attendee is asking, can you elaborate which indicators to look at? So which key indicators should we look at when we're trying to assess a mindful program for the workplace? What are some things that we should be aware of in terms of members?
Yeah, so from my experience, there were things that in our organization really collided. One was more, I guess, society conversations around the benefits of mindfulness and how it may play into more of a presence in everyone's life. There were, at the time, many awesome resources like meditation.live to help foster that from a company perspective versus a direct-to-consumer offering. And then the third being grassroots efforts. So it was feedback that we were hearing directly, that there were meditation groups forming at our sites, and we wanted to be able to foster that in the environment across the board, and really, I would say, assess what's going on. And I think then from a data perspective, we were able to validate the benefits of these kinds of practices on engagement and on presenteeism and on our, converse effects of medical spend. So, when you have mental health conditions, you're more likely to spend more in medical care. So being able to look at those different things to build the case would be all things that I would consider.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was a great answer. So we have another question from Adam here. He's asking, most leaders and employees are focused on the bottom line and may not be into the soft benefits of a successful mindfulness program. How do you get the skeptics on board with the benefits, even if they don't resonate with words like meditation, mindfulness, flow state? So what are some of the things that they can do to sort of make a case for it?
Yeah, I would go to the data. I'll try to be really brief in how we did this, but we looked at cohorts of members on our plans and comorbid conditions with mental health, as well as non-mental health diagnoses, and looked at presenteeism as well as spend, and we saw that there was 3 to 5 times increase across different measurements that we were looking at. So we had a data-backed view of how a solution may help individuals coping with something medically going on with them that would help them improve their health faster and offset some of those increased costs. And looking at, the solutions to help, I think part of your question is, the words that we use around mental health. We designed, our program is called Well Minds. And so it really helps people, and more of the conversation really helps to remove that stigma around particular words that may resonate with people in different ways.
Thank you, Jennifer. And actually, the next question we have is very similar to what you were just talking about. It's what about some negative connotations around the word meditation? Sometimes I really like what you said just now about mental health, referring to mental health, and then obviously citing the data. I think that's all very credible and useful when it comes to trying to make a case for it in the workplace. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, flexing to what your organization would be receptive to is going to make a program successful. And you can't force terminology in a particular way and it stick. And so I think having that flex and being able to talk about it, what makes sense for your organization is the best approach.
Wonderful. Thank you for that answer. We have another question from an anonymous attendee. They're asking, in your experience, is there a best time of the day to incorporate mindfulness team practices for best participation and engagement? So this refers back to step number 2, the engagement factor, getting people engaged.
That's a really interesting question. I think of it interesting just because we think of our organization as a global organization. So it's really hard to say one particular time of day would be good for everyone to join in. I think tying it to something regular, either at a particular location or geography, would be the best way to do that. And whether or not, so we've experienced, starting your weekly team meeting with a 2-second sort of pause and a grounding meditation or a body scan, and those really bring the mind back to the work at hand and what's going on. I think when those types of things are incorporated into the mechanisms of work, then it becomes then personal about what makes the most sense for me as the individual as to what I carry with me out into the world and in my personal life, and what may make sense from an early morning riser or an end of day. There's tons of different options about what works. So I wouldn't say that it's prescribed. I would just say tie it to something that the organization may be doing to help, foster the habit.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, I want to share something that we do at Meditation.live. We always start all of our all hands meetings with 10-minute meditation. And it really sets everybody up for a more relaxed meeting, more, de-stress. So I think it's definitely based on what the organization needs. But I also think establishing these habits could definitely help, companies really succeed in that end. Another alternative, and we'd love to hear more about this from you, could be introducing this during town hall meetings or that sort of thing. Aside from regular meetings during the day, I think it's to set the culture straight. Would be good to launch it in bigger company events. What are your thoughts on that specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what makes sense. A 10-minute meditation at the beginning of all hands is amazing. And I think that your culture supports that. I think that may sound really scary for an organization that doesn't have any kind of these practices. And I would just say start small. 1 minute gets you started, and you can build from there. And when there's role models doing it, it then permeates through the organization.
That's a great tip. I love the idea of starting small and then, launching and getting more advanced. I have a question as well, still related to employee, to engagement, but more related to the benefits of meditation. What are some of the benefits you've seen on team members and employees when they do practice meditation on a regular basis? What are some of the things that you notice in terms of productivity and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's tons of studies around the multitude of positive aspects around a mindfulness or meditation practice, whatever the form. I think a lot of people may enter that space for stress reduction or for help with sleep. But I think from an organization perspective, it builds a lot of things that are more of that soft skills. And I think that was in the prior question around it builds a more compassionate workspace. It builds more present leaders and more empathetic leaders, and it fosters innovation. So doing different kinds of mindfulness practices, whatever you label them, getting up from your desk and taking a 5-minute walk is outside in the middle of the day is going to foster more innovation in the afternoon than slogging through that email box. And so those kinds of things really do foster those benefits, from a leadership perspective as well as, employees. And when you have those things together, you have more engagement. You're better able to perform. You're better at whatever it is that you're working on. And I think also that from a health aspect perspective, there's more presenteeism. There's the ability to know when it may be difficult for you, and taking the time away helps in the longer term to not take a leave, or maybe not be out of work as long. And so I think all of those are just some that come top of mind, but there are tons that benefits across the board.
Wonderful. Yeah, those are definitely great. We had a couple of questions come in that I'll read out. The first one is, what are your thoughts about offering meditation and emotional wellness tools during the onboarding process? The experience can be very stressful for new hires.
I think that's a great idea. I think it also introduces your newest employees to the culture that you're trying to build. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yes, I agree. And another question that came in just now is, what's the role of leaders in the company to promote mindfulness? An example that they gave here is Mark, CEO of Salesforce, constantly promotes within the company, but many leaders don't. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think when you have a passionate leader, it's really beneficial to the overall organization, but you can't force that passion because then it becomes insincere. And so I would encourage finding others in the organization. If it's not the CEO or not the head of the organization, maybe it's someone else in the organization at a similar level, like to be able to express that passion and explain why it may be beneficial to focus on those sorts of skills to help foster that. And then right down to managers, when you make it okay to do these things at work, then it becomes okay for others to do.
Got it. Thank you, Jennifer. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. I love the idea of not having to force something. It's good to just feel like you have the passion and then go with it. I really like that notion and that idea. I want to remind everybody in the audience that we have about 10 minutes left. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask Jennifer, please feel free to use the Q&A chat box to be able to ask it. And with that said, I would like to move to step number 3. I think this is a really important one. It's all about measuring the success of your mindful program. And I know this can be very hard oftentimes, but I definitely like to hear from you, Jennifer, about what are some ways that you do measure the success of a program once you've implemented it, once you've had engagement on it. What would be the success metric that you would look for?
Yeah, so I think there are many ways to approach it. And I think the answer isn't as black and white as you maybe want it to be. I think it really depends upon the outcomes you're looking for from the program, and maybe how you measure other programs in your organization. And so I really feel like from my experience, really making sure that the outcomes are aligned to the vision that you had, that you're seeing the engagement that you had hoped for or that you had targeted for at the outset of introducing programs across the company. You're going to hear from employees whether or not they like it unsolicited. So, what are they saying? And other things that may be, less as an outcome of something that you've done, but more of a byproduct. So more grassroots efforts, more maybe engagement teams, building upon the foundation and doing more things at their particular site. I think all of those are measures. I think there can be programs depending upon what you're looking to solve, or really how you do that. There's ways to go back to that initial measurement that we set out to see if the outcomes are better from a health perspective, and noting that a lot of that takes time, and asking yourself, is this an ROI, and if it doesn't meet that, it's going to go away, or is it really we value wellness overall in our organization, and we can show that there are values in the offerings that we're putting together because it's the right thing for our organization, or are there other things that you would need to be more diligent on or more specific around those measurements?
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And, when we're talking about measurement, how does employee feedback sort of fall into it? We'd like to understand, is there a way, do you normally gather employee feedback? Is that something that you actually, account for ROI? How does that work in general?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So from a operating mechanism perspective, I would say there are several things that we do across the board, and we have a quarterly survey that we look for feedback through. We do ad hoc listening sessions, so we call them Follow Me Home, so where we talk to the customer about their experiences and really just to gain understanding, versus a survey out of how do you like this on a scale of 1 to 10, but more asking how it's impacted them, getting more meaty feedback, and really thinking about your overall mechanism throughout the year of assessment of programs. There is a defined budget, there is a defined, resources to deliver on the things that you want to deliver from an organization perspective, and how is it meeting those needs, all sort of weigh into that employee view of the benefit for the offering.
Got it. Thank you, Jennifer. We just had a question come in just now, and it is, should mindfulness be used as a cost saving for future health? And they're also asking, are there any studies based off of that? Is that something that you would, you would use, or in general, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's one element of a program approach, and it can come with very specific numbers and data around how your organization is looking or could look. There are studies, and I know that there's studies around presenteeism, absenteeism, and comorbid conditions. I don't, off the top of my head, can cite them, but they are out there. I think the risk in identifying that as your measure is that it takes time to see those results. So you have a snapshot in time of people who may be going through some health crises, or maybe even an ongoing condition. And, a year from now or 18 months from now, that may look very different. And so being able to watch cohorts over time, from a mental health skill building perspective and mindfulness practices, those, permeate, doesn't immediately fix your arm when you put a cast on it. Similarly, practices don't fix the concerns and the feelings that you're having immediately. So I would just caution that as being the sole measure.
Got it. I think that's a really good answer, and it makes sense to use meditation and mindfulness as a complement to everything else. Here's another question that came in as well, and again, I want to remind everybody we have 2 minutes left in the panel. So if you have any questions, this would be a good time to ask them. How would employees receive extending mindfulness and mental wellness tools to their family members?
Yeah, so I think twofold. One, how are you leveraging those tools with your employee population, and what would that look like to the family? In particular, let's just say you have single sign-on and that's the only way you've allowed access to the tool. You have a barrier for family members. So if that's of interest to the overall family, then thinking about ways when you implement the program on how to do that, so that it is inclusive of the wider audience. And then I think, how does it align with the other things that you're offering to the family? So we have some things that we offer to family members. We have some offered to family members that are on our medical plans, and then we have some things that are only for employees. So I really think that where it fits into your strategy, but it's definitely possible. I think just thinking about perception and how you do that and where it fits in all the other things.
Wonderful. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. I like the idea of aligning everything when offering to extended family members. Um, so we are out of time right now. I do want to close this panel and obviously thank Jennifer and the audience for being here today. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for all your knowledge and for answering all of our questions. To summarize,
Thank you.
the steps real quick, we went from introducing a mindful program to learning about engagement, and then finally to measuring the program. And if anybody's interested in the recording of this panel, feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to provide it to you. Jennifer, would you like to say a couple of last words?
Yeah, just thanks for having me today. It was really happy to talk about mindfulness. It's a personal passion of mine, and thank you for all the great questions.
Wonderful. And just to remind everybody as well in the audience, I will be hosting a panel in November with the head of mindfulness at Aetna, Andy Lee. So stay tuned for that, and see you everybody later. Thank you so much.